There is, in fact, only one relationship. It is the relationship with the self. There is, in fact, only one, ultimately, only one identity, only one being. You are that being, each of you complete unto yourself, and yet a part of something much, much larger, also complete in that form. Just as a single cell in a human body is a complete thing, so when they are brought together in many specialized uses, another complete thing results. The relationship with the self is the key. Why are you here? Why are you on this earth plane? Why do you live life after life after life, exploring the darkness, exploring fear, exploring limitation? What is the purpose? The purpose is to come back together into a whole greater, different, more complete, more, and believe it or not, this is true, more perfect. Well, if something's perfect, it's perfect, no? In the realm of the spirit, you are always perfect, and yet you are always in the act of becoming more perfect, becoming more complex, more complete. And so you journey through these lives as men and as women, as rich, as poor, as white, as black, wearing uniform after uniform, identity after identity, exploring all of the possibilities in order to find your way to a wholeness that transcends the wholeness you left. Well, in the wider reality, you are complete, you are perfect, as all things are perfect. Imperfection is a lie. Imperfection is one of the rules of the human game here on earth. But it is a temporary rule. It is a rule of convenience. It is a rule that applies only while you are playing this particular game. If you play a game of Monopoly, you abide by the rules of Monopoly. Whether or not they agree with the rules of the wider reality you live in, you accept that for the purposes of this game, these rules will be observed. Well, for the purposes of this game, of life, of this curriculum. You observe certain rules, certain facts obtain in each case. In this life, in every earth life, you have been living in a state of duality, of separation from yourself, from your true identity, from your true knowledge. Unique, but incomplete. In that wider reality, from that wider reality, you enter into human life. You enter in helplessness. You enter in fear. You explore the darkness. You live. You suffer. You die. Sounds great. But it's just a game. A game with a purpose. A purpose of perfection. You've all heard me say that you are each other. All of your individual experiences are also all of your universal experiences. Because in the wider reality, you are connected. In this reality, you appear to be disconnected. But now you are reconnecting, becoming aware again that you are not an island. You are groping your way toward understanding of a completion, of a state of balance that is vital for the completion of the human race and for the completion of this exploration of duality. Now, we've gone over much of this before because it is important for you to recognize what is the goal here. If you are misled as to the nature of the goal of the journey that you are on, you will not recognize the destination when you get to it. The destination is not what you have been thinking of as perfection. The destination for the human being is the destination of balance. That is the completion. Things exist in a duality only while they are out of balance. When balance is reached, barriers are breached, and the flow becomes whole, and the separate becomes one. The issue of sexuality has been the vehicle for much of the exploration of this state of imbalance and of duality. One of the rules of the game is that you get divided up into teams. Now, you all remember on the schoolyard when it's time to play a game. And the captains are chosen, and they start calling names one after another, and you go on one team and you go on the other team. And some are inevitably called first, and some are inevitably called last. And some feel delighted and pleased and expansive, and others feel that they wish they were somewhere else. Yet you must be divided into these teams because that's one of the rules of the game. Now, there are many, many ways that you can reproduce yourself. It is not by accident that the way chosen has been the way of the duality, that suits the duality, that is an expression of the duality. The duality extends in all directions, cutting through every area of your life, giving you a divided mind and a divided being, no matter what the subject, no matter what the issue. So in the issue of your sexuality, are you divided also? The issue here has to do with dominance and with passivity, with power and the erosion of power, with the belief that you are weak, with the belief that you are strong. The separation into sexes, and you've all been each, you've all explored the territory of the male and the territory of the female from every aspect and in every variation. As this team is divided into male and to female, they are not all alike on the male side, they are not all alike on the female side. Some are stronger than others, some more skilled than others, some more sensitive, some faster, some slower. Millions of variations divide you, or appear to divide you. The search here, again, is not for your idea of perfection, but for balance, for the human being to be where the earth and the sky meet, the Mother Earth and the Father God, united to produce this phenomenon called a human. Now you are going through the final stage of human evolution in order to bring yourself into balance, body, mind, and spirit, but also in every area of your life finding balance. This theater of sexuality has been a distraction, has been an obsession, a compulsion, has operated at levels far deeper than your ability to recognize, has operated from generation to generation, carrying family attitudes through, has operated on every level in all of your lives. You have been a strong woman. You have been a woman who has not found her strength. You have been a strong man. You have been a man who has not found his strength. You have been a man with much of the female. You have been a woman with much of the male. The exploration of the sexuality is a vast wheel. within each sex, and then a vaster wheel for both sexes. What have you been exploring with each other? Misunderstanding, breakdowns in communication, a realization that your essence as a man, your essence as a woman, appears to be completely different. Now, you know, you're going on a long, long journey that you're reaching the end of in this exploration of duality. That journey has changed greatly during the course of history. You insert yourself into time, into specific environments, into sex, into a family, into all of the conditions necessary for your stage of the journey that you're dealing with, the issues that you're dealing with in a particular life. And yet, since time is one of the rules of this game, you see change, linear change, operating through time. In the beginning, the sexuality was deeply divided into very clear roles in which the male did this and that and the other thing, and the female did this, that, and the other thing, and never the twain would meet. Now, for women, it looks, looking back on history, as though they've always gotten the dirty end of the stick. Pretty well true. Pretty well true. The male energy, that energy of domination, of action, of the intellect, of the ego, has dominated. It is the nature of male energy to dominate in the system that you have been exploring, where there is a duality. It has been a male-dominated system for a purpose. The purpose, again, to explore the polarity. The virtues of the woman, of the female energy, the virtues of nurture, of gentleness, of psychic and spiritual sensitivity, were virtues necessary for the existence of the human race, the continuation of the human race, were experiences that were absolutely vital, and the roles that women were allowed to play were appropriate to the female energy. Now, why should they be subject to the domination of the male energy when each has what are really complementary roles to play? Because that too is one aspect of the duality. The possessor of power and the one who has released power. Now, the world is changing, reality is changing, the human race is changing, and the reflection of the whole human being as he and she create a new reality in the millennia to come is going to be very, very different. Again, it is the search for balance and the finding of that balance that launches you into the era of wholeness. As history proceeded, particularly as the scent of the new age began to be smelt, you know, an age, a millennia, a time span devoted to a particular kind of exploration begins bearing the remnants of the age before it, it being only the seed of what shall flower, reaches finally its full flowering on the top of the curve, and then begins to decline as the whiff of the new consciousness begins gradually to be smelt and to be incorporated. And so there is a birth, a maturity, and a death of each age. You are now in the time of the death of the age of duality, in the time of the birth of the age of wholeness. In its full flowering? No, in its birth. That's why this process for each of you is so difficult, because you are still caught up in a reality that largely believes rules that are changing. And yet the rules only change to reflect that which is being born, the new reality. So what you are going through in this life of transition, certainly the most difficult in very subtle ways, but definitely the most difficult single lifetime you have ever and will ever have. Now, certainly there are lifetimes when you've died horrible deaths and starved to death and had lives of penury and lives of tremendous tragedy and difficulty, but put that aside. In terms of spiritual process, this is the big one. In this life you die. In this life you are reborn at the same time. A neat trick, and each one of you on this path is doing it. And again, as always through history, the primary theater of action is relationships. There is not one woman here who is not, at some level, either on the surface and or very deeply, angry at men. There is not one man here who is not equally angry at women. You are trained to be so. Your experience dictates it. In each life you create a familial situation that will produce through the mother, the male, through the mother, the female, through the father, the male, the conditions that you will be challenged with throughout the life. And angers that have traveled life to life to life to life are born anew, triggered anew, by that essential relationship. And if you were an orphan, then someone else takes over the job. But in each case, there is always a female model and a male model. And when there is a lack of either, then it is a sign of a life of tremendous imbalance in which the work is even harder. But the goal, again, is not the fight, not the difference, not the separation, not the anger spoken and unspoken, but the oneness that is the goal. Now, you all know that within yourself, in this process of change that you have been and are going through, your greatest enemy, your greatest obstacle is you. You feel that you constantly betray yourself, that your ideals are high, and your follow-through stinks. You are your own severest critic. You struggle and you wrestle within yourself with opposing forces. That which wants to be born and that which doesn't want to die. The fear self that is your inheritance from life after life after life. And the love self that is being born in you for the first time in your human experience. You've tasted it, you've touched it, but it's always been tainted by the fear. By the fear that all will be taken away. By the fear that you will be betrayed. By the fear that you will be abandoned. By the fear that you can't trust yourself or by extension anyone else. So that you are always on the defensive, always hiding and hiding most of all from yourself. All of this is coming to a head in this life. And again, the vehicle, the primary vehicle is the relationship. You look at the world around you, and particularly the Western world, and particularly the United States of America, because the United States of America is the birthplace of this new age, and as we said a few days ago, so it was planned. Among your founding fathers were those who were consciously involved in founding the age that had hundreds of years yet to be born, who planned the birth time of America along astrological principles, who were privy to ancient secrets going back through the Egyptians to the Atlanteans, who were mystics in an age of rationalism, and who consciously created this country as a vehicle for what was to come. And so you see the most change in this country. And what else do you see? You see relationships under tremendous attack. You see divorce beyond anything ever seen before in human history. Short relationships. Relationships of depth but not of length. You see more pain in the relationship. Is that because there is more pain in the relationship between men and women now? Absolutely not. There's always been tremendous pain in that apparently unending war. You feel it now because your sensitivity is growing, because you are preparing to be reborn, because an age is dying and being born. All of these issues are coming up with greater clarity. It is important for you now to go through every process that you need to go through so that you can lay to rest the relationship issue that looks to you like it's between you and him, or you and her, or a whole succession of hers and hims, but is really between you and you. And when you come into balance, you draw to yourself that other self, wearing a different robe and a different mask, who is also ready to come into balance. Fate, which is the structure of your lives. You have free will and to fill in that structure in any way you choose. But the fate is now accented. Now there are so many homecomings. Now connections are being completed. Now the fragments of self scattered over time and space for thousands upon thousands of years are coming back together, creating a new wholeness. The twins that you have been separated from are reuniting within you and without you. You yourself, as you look in the mirror, see an individual, but you are also seeing hundreds and hundreds of individuals, hundreds of faces that have stared back at you from that mirror over millennia of time, who have gone through every experience necessary to come to this point of reunification within the self and reunification without, reunification with others. Now, we've said before there can be a whole succession, if necessary, of potential soulmates, because the fear principle is still operating when you come together in a relationship and operating at a very powerful level. And when you come together with a soulmate, you come together with that mirror image that is angry at having been cheated and lied to, and whose anger parallels yours. So you come together warily, recognizing old enemies, but seeing indeed in a mirror and recognizing that those old enemies are you. And sometimes you flee and run away. But another aspect of self comes again, and another opportunity is offered. And for each one of you, this issue of relationships, the inheritor of so much pain, is going to come into balance in this life. You will finally be at peace with the issues contained in relationships, the issues of power. You have misunderstood power in this long time of male dominance, thinking that power is war and power is force, and power is who is the strongest. Power is wholeness. Power is gentleness, but it is also strength. As you go through the process within your own life, following the trail, laid out by your own higher self that will lead you into wholeness. You are following a trail that was marked long, long ago for you. A trail that in this life is full of fear, where you come up against issues that you have bounced off of again and again and again and again. This is indeed a life of mystical importance. A tremendous homecoming for each and every one of you. And the mirror that you find in those other fragments of self will lead you to see yourself more clearly. And the balance that you seek to find within yourself will be completed with another. If you were able to stand back and use all of your senses and see the world and see humanity and see the universe and see the nature of reality in its true form, you would see that all things are one. Everything is connected. Just as you are formed from thousands and millions of atoms, all joining together, yet with plenty of space between them, so is all one. You are on a painful journey toward the recognition of that significant fact. This is a major step that you are taking in this life. We urge you in this process of reunification to come to each other in relationships with courage and with faith, because this is the time. There are no lies except the ones that you have told yourself. You will not be misled in this if you have the faith to work through the relationships, to listen to your heart rather than to your mind, to find your strength rather than to believe in your weakness. You are helping each other in this journey. When you are whole yourself, you will be whole with each other. Now, what is this going to mean in this ongoing journey? It means that you're going to find peace with your parents, perhaps not in the flesh, but in your heart, because it is the parents in this life that have triggered the male-female issues that you've been acting out in your relationship life. The goal, once again, is not anyone's idea of perfection. It is balance. In this process of accepting yourself, you're trying to find your true nature. Who am I? What am I here for? And how can I be true to myself? As you look for that nature and as you discover that nature, you will find that to achieve the true perfection, it is not necessary to erase from yourself all that you have despised about yourself. It is necessary to see yourself with love and to find that some of the things you have despised about your actions, your character, the way you deal with things, some of the things that you have despised, you are despising only because you are seeing the negative aspect of that characteristic. You are to be unique. You are to be strong personalities. You are to have opinions that differ from each other. Else why this separation into unique individuals? You are not to become some sort of a heavenly chorus, all singing in unison as your wings flap and you mount up into the air. You are to be yourself. You are to find your nature, to accept your nature. That is the key, not the changing of the nature, but first the acceptance, to look into that mirror that reflects your inner reflection and say to yourself, I like you, I accept you, warts and all, finding that even the warts have beauty. I accept that there are things about me that I would like to change. But I see in my increased and widened perception that I am a thing of beauty. That I have been working through my life on crutches, with one hand tied behind me, with a blindfold on, with paper stuffed in my ears and a clothespin on my nose. It's a miracle I've done so well as I have. And you know, the closer you come to realizing that wholeness that is your birthright, the more sympathy, empathy, and understanding that you will have toward your journey. You know, so many of you, as we said, you're so hard on yourself, and you look at your life and you see a succession of failures, and you see your weakness, and it stands out, and you think, how could anyone put up with me? I'm too this, or I'm too that, or I'm not enough this, and I'm not enough that. And you put yourself down, and you put yourself down, and everyone encourages you to put yourself down, because, of course, modesty is a virtue. Now you need to celebrate yourself. Because that same self that you have put down is your own perfection as a human being. A man and a woman of passions as well as of mind, of righteous angers as well as joyous laughter, of contrasts, of apparent oppositions, bountifully full of apparent contradictions. But that's what makes the texture of life and of character. You must believe in your own goodness, for you are good. You have believed in limitation because that was all you saw. You have believed in evil within because you've been living in the darkness and believing lies, feeding illusions with the strength of your belief. You are peeling away the layers of disguise. But do not misapprehend what is to be found when those layers of disguise are removed. Please, in your dealings with yourself and in your dealings with each other, do not be mistaken as to who you are expected to be, or you will only stand in your own way. There is a great temptation when that moment of epiphany comes and you begin to recognize that there is a wider reality, there is a higher nature, there is a spiritual journey, there's a terrible temptation to try laboriously to fashion an ill-fitting halo and wear it on your head, to feel that you are always expected to be full of smiles and full of delight, always even-tempered, always balanced, always centered. It ain't going to happen. And we want to tell you that now so you won't be disappointed. Because when you truly find that perfection in this life, well, the life is over then because you don't have any more work to do. The life is discovery. Life is change. And the perfection that you seek and want to express, you have already. Don't turn away in horror at your own angers. Recognize the cause behind those angers. Recognize the imbalance that has stimulated the fear that creates that anger. You're widening your perception as you go on this journey. You're seeing from a better angle. And to see and to understand is to forgive. To forgive yourself for your misapprehension as to who you should be. You are who you should be. And you come together to help each other see that. The lover, it is said, is always blind. If you are in love, you see only the best, only the most positive, only the glorious potential of your loved one. It is only if you fall out of love that you begin to count up the debits. Love is blind. Love is accepting. The state of being in love, far from being an anomaly, far from being an illusion. You shouldn't sneer at that state, because that's the reality. That's the reality you're going to. That's the reality that is becoming you, in which you are always in love. In love with another, in love with yourself, in love with life, in love with God. And it's not going to be boring, and it's not going to mean everybody going around with a perpetual smile on their face. There are always going to be human challenges. But you are going to be dealing with those challenges from a different perspective, a perspective of love for yourself. The war has existed between the sexes for a high purpose. The war has existed to show each of you what you are struggling against, to show each of you the other side, to allow each of you to experience the full range. Artificial, duality is artificial, but it has been the rule of the game. The game is changing. The rules are changing. You are changing. What is going to be the relationship and the nature of man and of woman as this new age gets going? The goal is not that he be just like she. How boring that would be. The goal is not that you all be clones of each other. The goal is not to end the difference between the sexes, as the Frenchman said, vive la différence. Because the difference between the sexes is a celebration, when fear no longer is part of the equation. Men are completing themselves. The male energy is not being swept away, except in an extreme of revulsion. As you know, for it's very difficult being a man in this society who is coming awake for the first time, because there's a tremendous load of guilt that goes with that. When your eyes start to open and you look at history and you look at your personal history and your personal attitudes, and you think, how could any woman stand me or any other man? A history of persecution. It's not easy dealing with that and retaining some love for yourself. So the first tendency is to say all things having to do with traditional male ideals out the door. Have nothing to do with me. So the pendulum swings a little bit too far, and you tend to wind up with a lot of wimpy men. And for the woman, it's very hard in today's world to be a woman. A long, long tradition of victimization. How embarrassing to be a woman and to wake up and to look at your sex. It's state in the modern world, it's state through history. And as you wake up and begin to find access to your own male energy, you say, well, none of that traditional woman stuff for me. No more victimization. And you get a lot of abrasive women. But that's not the goal, any more than the wimpy man. The goal is balance within each. But always, when the tide changes, well, it comes in and washes away a few things before it finds that balance. And so as you go through this journey, the goal within is balance within yourself. If you're a woman, The goal is to balance your male and your female energy so that you are not only nurturing, loving, gentle, giving. Those aren't bad words. Only when that's all you are. That's a bad word. When you access the male energy also, you become balanced. But you don't become a man. And the same thing with the men. They are releasing the gentler aspects of themselves, realizing that the role they have played is too limiting, that isn't the whole story. The goal in each case is balance, but still the sexes remain unique. But here you have a whole woman who doesn't need to be victimized anymore, doesn't want to be victimized, and doesn't want to victimize anyone else. And you have a man in the same condition. But the man is still going to have a little different emphasis because there is a purpose. We're not going to, because the consciousness is changing doesn't mean that there are no longer going to be two sexes. And it's not going to be a world full of men and women who are trying to be each other. It's going to be full of men and women who are each complete, and in joining together in their completeness, create a third energy that is whole, completely whole, combining as it does both men and women as well as male and female energy. Every man and every woman has both male and female energy in different degrees, frustrated to different extents. But no one, John Wayne included, was all man. And no one, on the other hand, is all woman. You are all each other in that respect too. Reach out to each other with love, acceptance, understanding, knowing your own strength, realizing and accessing your own power, but not trying to create in the other what you think the ideal man would be or what you think the ideal woman would be. In tending to your own garden, you create flowers in the garden of your mate. We say to the woman, so many of you have had to deal with men who are called passive-aggressive. In the olden days, a man didn't have to be passive-aggressive. He could just simply be aggressive. And there wasn't anyone to say him nay. You don't like it? Whack. But now, the times are changing. The whiff of the new age has come. The awareness is beginning to open the eyes and the sensitivities, and the men are beginning to access their own fullness, wholeness, balance. And so the situation is different, and the anger must now be throttled down and used in less direct ways. Less direct, more subtle, more difficult to deal with. Well, for each of you, we say to you, what do you want? What do you want to result in the man that you would like to spend this incarnation with? You want honesty. You want directness. You want openness. You want strength that isn't bullying. And the men, do you really want someone who's going to make dinner for you while you put your feet up and read the paper? Someone who's going to take care of every little thing? Someone that's always going to be there as a servant, smiling, pleasant, and acquiescent? We think not. You're not who you were either. To create what you want in the opposite sex, you must recreate yourself. Don't try to be the sculptor of your lover. Go through the issues that you are dealing with love for yourself and honor to your process, with a hand held out in friendship but never in manipulation. That is why in this process of relationships, always you must finally come to a point, and sometimes it's very often the most painful point that you ever come to, where you have to say to yourself, I love you, but I love me and I can get along without you. That moment of truth must be accepted for love to lose the accent of dependency. You must recognize that you can stand free and clear and alone and whole. That you are not dependent upon the other. Completion to yourself. The other person can act as a mirror to you, can act as a helper and act as a guide. But it's not his responsibility, it's not her responsibility, it is you. In your journey. Then when you can say that, then the whole relationship is completed, because it's not two people leaning. It's two standing and holding hands. Two choosing to be whole together. Now, because this has been such a rare occurrence throughout history, it is going to be revolutionary in its impact as this life and other lives go on. Because that third entity that is created by two individuals coming together in wholeness creates power that you haven't dreamed of. Power that is not limited to the relationship. More and more, your relationships in this life and in the future are going to be partnerships on a number of levels. And not where there's a senior partner and a junior partner. An equal partnership that will be used in many areas of your life, because you together, whole together, are stronger, greater than the sum of the parts. Now, what of the question then of homosexuality? Does what we have said indicate that that is not a part of this journey to wholeness? No, it is certainly not intended to convey that message, because that is not the case. Each human being has both male and female energy within him. Gender and energy are two different things. Someone of the male gender can have so much female energy, and combined with a pattern of experience in surrounding lives that have created for good purpose a man who loves a man, a woman who loves a woman. Now you say, well, that's not going to keep the human race going. Well, if everyone chose up sides in that way, no, you're right. It wouldn't take long before the human race came to a halt. But that's not the case either. The world is not going to become homosexual. Neither is the world going to become heterosexual. It has never been either. It has always been a part of that wheel. And the completion that a man finds with a woman is the completion that we're talking about of balance between the various aspects of his and her nature. The same principle applies in female-female relationships, in male-male relationships, when that is the point of the incarnation. Now, those of you who may be homosexual or bisexual in this life, maybe in an adjacent life, 100% close to it, heterosexual. Because that was a different journey, a different need for understanding. The relationship, the only relationship, is the relationship with the self. The balance that you find within yourself is not the balance that the person sitting next to you would find within themselves. It is not the same. Your balance doesn't mean that you must become 50% male energy and 50% female energy. It is that you must accept the nature of both energies within you and express your true nature in this incarnation appropriately. And so there are going to be very feminine women and very masculine men and everything in between. That is not the imbalance. The imbalance is between love and fear. The imbalance comes with not accepting yourself, not seeing yourself for the beauty that you are. The point of this life is to discover your power, to discover that you have no limitations, that we're going to go into in much more detail next time. The point of this life is for you to discover that you are a God, that you have power, and that power may be expressed in any one of 1,000 ways. Power is love for yourself. Power is acceptance of yourself. Power is the recognition that I'm as good as you, not better, not worse, but different. Power is in loving your difference. Power is not becoming as thin as the woman next door. Power isn't becoming as rich as the man in the next office. Power isn't accepting poverty or wealth either. Power is accepting yourself and becoming the finest example of that unique combination of forces and energies that defines you. Power is taking the scales, the blindfold away from your eyes, pulling the earplugs out, dropping the crutches. Power is doing the impossible and discovering that it wasn't impossible. Power is finding happiness. Not by becoming the person your mother said you ought to be, not the person your father said you ought to be, not the person your school teacher said you had the potential to be but were falling far short of. Power is in finding the uniqueness of yourself and being that self. A rose is a rose is a rose. Unique, one, full of beauty, complete, thorns and all. A rose is not more beautiful if you take the thorns off. You are beautiful now. What you have been told and what you have believed constitute beauty have been lies. Beauty isn't anyone else's idea of perfection. Beauty isn't forcing yourself to give up all of your bad habits, all of your unfortunate tendencies, all of your angers, all of your crankiness in the morning. If you believe that and continue to believe that, your life will continue to be a torment for you because you will forever fall short of your own goals, because the goals are not based on reality. You must recognize that that which you have despised and that which has caused you trouble about yourself in this life is not fault and is not failure, is not evil and is not weakness. It is because you have not loved yourself. It is because you have taken someone else's word for who you are. Be yourself. Be bold. Reach for a star. The dreams that you have had and put away because I'm not big enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not well educated enough, I'm not good enough. Take them out of the drawer and dust them off and try them on for size. Reach beyond any reach you thought possible in the past. If there is a woman and you think, I'd like to talk to her, get to know her, make love with her. But I know she'd hate me, so why try? Attempt. Make bold choices. Act out your dreams. Believe in yourself. The more you believe in yourself, the more you act out of that belief, the more confirmation you will get that you are. My goodness, I never thought I could do that. I didn't think she'd look twice at me. I never thought I could get that raise. I never thought I could live without that horrible job. But I can. And if I can do that, I bet I can do... No. Well, I'll give it a try. And every time, every challenge that you take, every bold action, gives you a confirmation that increases your strength. It makes it a little more possible, a little easier to reach a little farther the next time. Redefining yourself. Finding your own wholeness. And in that process, ending the war of duality within yourself, not by claiming total victory, not by crushing that aspect of self that you want to do without, but in love, opening yourself, letting the light shine into the dark corners, for it's the unknown that you fear about yourself, that you suspect your motives. Turn the light on inside. Find out that you were wrong. And everyone was wrong about what they thought about you. You end the war within. Not by total victory, but by total love. And the hand that you have held out to that man or to that woman, the mirror that you have held up, allows you both to see within, to see through other eyes the beauty that you have hid from yourself, to look into other eyes and find the love that you have denied yourself. The war, the sexual war, has always existed within. It is the man who is angry and disappointed in himself that hits the woman. I hate you for what I see in me. And so you victimize each other. And it looks like the war is between men and women, when the war is between a duality of maleness and femaleness that each of you has. When is this war to be won? It's already won. It's already won. Haven't you heard? Well, act as though you've heard. Act as though the war is over within you. Act as though you love yourself. Pretend that you do. It's going to take that at the beginning. And every challenge is going to be frightening and fearful and, oh no, that's too big for me. Oh wait, I forgot. I'm strong. I'm brave. I'm whole. I can do anything. Maybe. No, I can. I can do anything. And do it. Timidity is also fear. Modesty isn't a virtue. It's a socially comfortable way of hiding. Now, bragging isn't a virtue either. But confidence, belief in yourself, love for yourself, there's a virtue. When you act on your own behalf, out of belief for yourself, out of love for yourself, you change yourself. You feel yourself straightening inside, squaring your shoulders, feeling pretty good about yourself, liking to look into the mirror. That's a change of energy. Every positive act that you do for yourself turns another light on inside of you. Pretty soon you're glowing. Well, that glow attracts. And it attracts a relationship with someone who's also glowing and who draws you. This is a time in human history, this time right now, where 7/10 of the human race is drowning in fear, angry, lost, despairing. Now, a certain number of them are going to have their time in this life to wake up and join the parade. But a lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are here to suffer. A lot of them are here to experience the fear and to be drowned in the fear. To be lost in their own anger. To act out the death of the beast. That is the duality. Not lost forever, but that's another lecture. But what you have to realize is that you're a little minority right now. And you're not getting a lot of support from the wider culture. You get, you reveal some of your beliefs, and some people will say, oh, really, I've been thinking that too. And others will say, you're nuts. Well, you have to accept that. Because by their standards, there's no question about it. You are nuts. You believe in things that can't be seen. You hear voices inside. You believe things that no one else believes. No one's respectable. You are learning to be courageous because you are pioneers. And the glow that you turn on within yourself by bringing love to yourself is like a lighthouse. And it attracts others whose lights are also going on. And so, one by one, you become 2 by 2. And 2 by 2, you touch others and help them to open up. And gradually, the world changes. The sexual war is over, but 7/10 of the human race don't know about it. This is a life for you of transition. It is a life for humanity of transition. It is a life for the world of transition. One thing is becoming another. And you are becoming whole. And your relationship issues that have cursed you for so long are ending. Ending. Love yourselves. And you will love each other. For you are all one. So now we'll draw this talk to an end, and we'll come back in a few minutes for some questions.
For those of us that have had one of the parents missing, and you said that was, in my case, since it was the father, then is it really for me to, is the focus then so much in that male energy that was missing and finding that within myself?
Yes, and also the experience of betrayal and a lack of trust regarding the male. Now, not only did you have, it doesn't matter that you were but an infant. The experience is nonetheless has a powerful impact upon you. Also, the experience of the mother, in your case, provides an attitude that is shared regarding the male. And so the spotlight is focused ever more brightly on that issue in your life because of that absence. Now, you don't have male energy absent in you. You have it absent and in a condition of mistrust based upon the early experiences. And so you're working through that issue yourself in relationship areas. First, bringing up all the distrust, the issues of betrayal that began with the circumstances of the absent father.
Plautus, can you comment for me on what was going on with me in this past week in regard to a relationship, the person named Bob that we've spoken about before, and the terms that I've come to with that?
The anger that you feel, the anger that is akin to despair, is really in a disguise, because it's a release. It's a release disguised as a sense of loss. And so first comes the darkness, then comes the dawn. And experiencing the darkness and experiencing the loss is the loss within you of that connection. But it's really a prelude to what we said earlier of your realizing that you are all right, that you are complete within yourself. And so the dawn follows that. So live through the darkness of farewells and darkness of, and we're talking particularly about inner farewells. Farewells to old expectations. Farewells to an old mindset that brought no reward. Well, when you lose something in your life, however painful it might have been, it's still a death. And it's still accompanied by grief, by darkness, by sense of separation. But it's a prelude to a much greater opening.
Can you comment on where he's at right now?
In the sense?
Of me.
Here is one who is full of fear and who's recoiled. The sense that we have, the image that we have of him, is one who is climbing into a box and closing it. Protection, extreme self-protection. And why the need for the extreme self-protection is that he's been feeling vulnerable. Well, it's important to feel vulnerable. And you may go through, anyone may go through a number of times of allowing vulnerability to a point, and then think, oh my goodness, I'm totally at risk here, and closing up again. And then peeking out and saying, well, no explosion happened, I'll try it again. You may duck down once or twice again, but it's not a permanent situation.
Plautus, when one is in a relationship or was in a relationship that is very difficult and very stormy and then is alone and feels much better and more balanced, there is a fear of entering into another relationship.
Yes, but of course, and that's natural because you base this upon experience. You say what has happened is going to continue to happen. You have to disprove that false belief to yourself. The experience that you have on your way to recognizing your own okayness doesn't need to keep you from testing the waters again. And when the opportunity comes, yes, there's going to be a sort of knee-jerk thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to do that again. But it's not going to be very deep, because that has not been the purpose of the release. It is to help you to recognize that you're not going to be blocked, and that you've already been through the realization of your fears, and not only survived, but thrived. So you don't have to worry about shying away too much from another opportunity.
Plautus, how does chronic pain or headaches, that I'm assuming one afflicts upon oneself, how does one resolve that?
Yes, that's technically true, but we think too often it's just another vehicle for self-condemnation. And when you say to another or say to yourself, well, here's this negative or painful situation in my life, but through my higher knowledge and my enlightenment, I realize I brought it on myself. What a jerk I am. And it just becomes another way to blame yourself, to kick yourself. And while it is true in the widest sense that, of course, you create your own reality, it shouldn't be misinterpreted as saying that you're the bad guy in doing that. You only create such blockages to draw to your attention what lies behind the block. And wherever there is in terms of physical health, wherever there's a chronic kind of situation, you can be sure that it has karmic roots, that spiritual issues form the base, and that's the physical recognition of those issues. So specifically in headaches or attacks to the head, well, what's meant there? Well, look at it symbolically. What does the head mean to you? What does pain in the head mean to you? And what does it do to you? Well, it clouds the thinking, and it also directs your antagonism at your mind. And why? Because you don't trust yourself. You don't trust your mind. You feel that you have failed and betrayed yourself through that, and so you keep it under attack. You can treat the symptoms, of course, and I'm sure you do, but that's not going to take away the cause. The cause you're dealing with on a completely different level. The symptoms will fade away when the cause is removed. And so as you deal with matters relating to trusting your mind, you get into a situation in many lives, you do trip yourself up and you create mental apparitions that frighten you. And so the next life comes along and you think, well, the mind's no good. I certainly can't trust myself there. And so you attack yourself on that ground. But it's there not to block you, but to point the way, the direction that you need to work in. And so your own self-trust is at issue here, and the way to let go of the frustration, of the pain, the headaches, is, as we said earlier, to act as though you trusted yourself, to act boldly, to act on your intuition, not to dally, not to hide. And so when opportunities come up, even if your experience has been, well, I've screwed this up in the past, I probably will again, say, no, I'm good, I'm right, I'm strong, I'm wise, and I'm going to make my choice. And because the purpose of this process is not to confirm you in your fears, but to reveal to you that your fears are illusion, you will get confirmation every time you take a positive action on your own behalf. And gradually you'll find the physical symptomology disappears. And as we look at your energy, we do not find a proximate physical cause that is worthy of a great deal of concern. There's no brain tumor, there's nothing organic. Really, there is an imbalance in the spine that is the trigger to this physical symptomology, particularly at the base of the skull on the right side. To tracing that down also to the right side of the inner side of the right shoulder blade. You could have adjustments on that would help alleviate the pain, but as we say, it has spiritual base, and that you are working on.
Plautus, could you comment on the difference between twin flames and soulmates?
Well, there are so many different, we have a tape that of one of these sessions regarding soulmates. We draw your attention to that, and only briefly will we say that terminology, we were very reluctant to even get into the terminology of soulmates because it's so thoroughly misunderstood, and there's so much contradictory information. What are called twin flames, which is not a part of our particular vocabulary, is related to the soulmate issue. It is perhaps even deeper than that. Soulmates are not necessarily romantic returns, but they are aspects of self, of the fractured self that return. And you can find a soulmate in a friend. You can find a soulmate in a parent, as well as under romantic circumstances. We say, as we said earlier, the relationship area, romantic relationship area, has been the theater of action for much of the exploration of the duality. So more often than not, the soulmate factor comes into play there, but not exclusively.
Plautus, do you have any specific advice for those of us who were raised embracing more of the opposite energy to our gender? In other words, a girl who was a tomboy or a boy who was encouraged to be more feminine, because it's generally, that the male is looking for the female female and vice versa, but some people kind of get that backwards.
No, there's really no difference. Whether you identify with the male energy or you identify with the female energy, it is still, whether you are male or female in those circumstances, you are still dealing with a fundamental issue of imbalance that is no different in terms of how you work on it. It is different in its construction because of your own particular needs, and that's a very common fact, a very common situation. That one may identify with the opposite sex parent, or we should more accurately say, with the opposite sex energy. Now, the tomboy may or may not have more male energy than female energy. The identification with the father, the identification with the male energy goes beyond that. And as you explore your relationships with other men, the issues relating to the father come up, therefore triggering the issues relating to your own concern with your male energy. That is to say, your temporal power, your power to control your life, which comes under the heading of the male energy. And so whatever example best gives you the reflection that you need to see to deal with your imbalance, so it will be. So there isn't really a separate set of instructions for those situations.
I guess why it seems particularly difficult is that, well, in my case, I tend to be a better friend to men than romantic partner because I identify with them almost as a man. And so how do I find that feminine part to have a relationship that's more a man and a woman?
That is why we have said in a soulmate relationship, you are each the keys to each other's release, the combination to each other's lock. Therefore, the connection that will unlock you is going to be complementary in the response to male-female energy. And so you will find one that completes you by helping you complete yourself. You will find that balance within yourself, but you will find another individual whose own combination of attitudes works perfectly with yours. Yes?
Plautus, is there any particular way that you can, I think that maybe I've contacted a spiritual guide. Is there any particular signs or things that can make you sure or more sure that you have or you haven't? Is there anything?
Well, it's always a leap of faith. You know, it's always called the still small voice. It's subtle and it's evanescent. It's something you can't quite put your finger on because that's where the faith comes in. And trust is so much a universal issue that for everyone, with barring very few exceptions, when you go in search for spiritual guidance, you are never very sure, particularly in the beginning, is this it or is it not? Now, is that real or is it unreal? Is this my imagination or not? Is this a true voice or a false voice? Because it comes to you as an issue of trust in yourself. If you have asked for guidance, trust A, that you will receive guidance, and trust B, that you will know the guidance, and so what you need to do is act as though this guidance is true, is appropriate, and it will grow in its impact on you to make it, to confirm itself. But always it begins with a leap. You said, when Paul began this process of channeling, the distrust was very, very, very deep. And the distrust is not yet completely erased, because where that is an issue, it is a deeply rooted issue. And to take a process that is not provable by accepted ego mind standards is to accept a tremendous challenge. And so it's by their fruits ye shall know them. Well, is the information that you receive, the feelings that you receive, are they positive? Are they a benefit to you? That's the litmus test. Yes.
It seems among the people that I meet that in this day and age, women are much more open to following their spiritual path result of that, that leads to a very frustrating imbalance in dating partners that form an equal kind of relationship. You are any
Yes, this is definitely the way things are beginning. And they are beginning that way because the male role is involved much more in rigidity, and there is much more of an investment. You're dealing with the one who has been king of the mountain. The one who has been king of the mountain is always more conservative in retaining that power. Whoever is in charge doesn't want change because they've got things the way they want them. Who needs change? Who needs to open up all these matters? And when the male has been encouraged to be separate from his fellows, to keep his own counsel, to be far away from his own instincts, intuition, feelings, those characteristics that he would scorn as being female in their nature, there's an additional barrier to opening up. And so as this enlightenment comes, as the energy of awakening is felt, it is responded to first, by and large, by women who have less to lose, more to gain, and whose characteristics are more receptive to more subtle situations. But that's not a permanent situation. It is a beginning. It is the most open area. And as this time continues, there will be and are more and more men who are also following that road. And it will become more and more socially approved, and then more and more men will come along on the journey. So we realize that at the moment there is a definite discrepancy and disparity, and it does make things difficult in the relationship area, but it is also not only in the process of change, but each of you who is calling out to your mate will have a response. Whatever the barriers may be and however deep the opposition may originally be, you may be the one who lights the light, but the light will be lit. Yes.
Plautus, you mentioned earlier fate, sort of.
Yes.
Do we each have, when we have glimmers of our own futures and our own future potentials, how much can we trust the inconsistencies that seem to be there? Will a person, for instance, become a great painter, or will he become a great something else if he's going to be great?
All right. In this matter of fate versus free will, there is no true contradiction. When you, and we're putting this in accurately, but we think you can understand the principle. When you are between lives and you think, well, I've got to deal with this and this and this, a whole complex of issues, and for me to do this, I need these kind of circumstances in my life. I need to create this kind of a role to play, this kind of a persona. This is who I need to be in order to be appropriately challenged. And so in creating that reality and entering into the life, you are coming from a place where you have created a structure. You've created circumstances. You've created conditions. You have created a structure. The structure that you have created can be called fate. The structure is just bare beams and a framework and a foundation. What you build on that foundation is your free will. Now, you can take a foundation and make of it a shack or a palace. That is your free will. There are certain matters, certain timing in the life that you may think of as fated. Certain encounters with other individuals, encounters with certain situations. Then the free will has to do with how do I respond? Positively, negatively, with fear, accepting challenges, denying challenges. Each little decision has its own array of choices. And in choice, you have free will. In structure, you have fate.
Plautus, will we continue our relationship in future lives with our soulmate?
Yes, that's a good question. And the fact is that you have gone through life after life after life in a group in which you have played many different roles for each other, with each other, for mutual benefit. This group that you have traveled with is like a cluster of cells in that greater organism that we spoke of earlier, where there is a commonality of identity and an interaction of energy that is ongoing. Now, you find the individual that is the mate to your soul. Well, in this life, you're coming to the ending and the beginning of a new kind of world and a new kind of person, a whole person, and the challenges that come to a human race that is whole rather than lost in duality. Your purposes are going to be different. The way that you enact those purposes is also going to be different. The coming together with the mate to your soul is, in essence, coming together with yourself. You do not and cannot lose yourself. That connection that you have made in this life is not going to be repeated, but it will be continued, enlarged, and expanded upon. That individual that you have reunited with in this life will be a constant soul companion in the lives yet to come. And as we've said before, the incarnations you have not yet experienced will all take place in what you now see as the future. That is to say, under conditions of human wholeness rather than duality. The purpose of the journey changes. The journey does not end. And the relationships that you have laboriously formed, broken, and reformed during the time of the duality and are now becoming perfected will continue in their perfection to be a part of the constellation of lives that form your greater being. And so the one in this life, the girlfriend who becomes the lover, who's the soulmate, may not appear in the same guise in lives to come, but will be a part of that constellation. Yes?
Plautus, was the society that existed during the time of Atlantis a male-dominated society?
In the time of Atlantis, you understand that the true Atlantis was what you now know as Venus, another planet, not simply an ancient society. That Atlantis on Earth was a remnant of the Atlantean remnant itself that journeyed to this planet. The relationships in Atlantis are comparable but not identical to the relationships that have been formed and come into being in this life. For one thing, the problem with Atlantis is that they failed to make this leap into wholeness. And so in repeating the experiment, you change some of the variables so you don't come up with the same result. And so the chemistry, the mix, was different then than it is now, but not so different as to be unrecognizable. By the time Atlantis came into its final flowering, while there were definitely sexual role differences, they weren't quite the same as they have been on Earth. There was not equality in the sense that we are describing equality now, because the rules have changed a bit. So if we were, we could say, yes, it was a male-dominated society. It wouldn't mean the same as it does when we say that of Earth, and therefore it would be misleading. Women, the females, played a strong role in Atlantean society, but their area of involvement was pretty much separate from the male. A sort of separate but equal situation.
Plautus, earlier you mentioned that we're going to merge with our Atlantean selves. Is there any way that we can speed up or accelerate that process to allow it to happen more?
It is already, or has already happened. There isn't anything to speed up. The connection with Atlantean energy, and we realize it's not the easiest thing to understand. It's not that you are becoming that Atlantean self or that that Atlantean self is becoming you. You are connecting with an Atlantean incarnation, just as you would and have connected with other Earth human incarnations, because all things are simultaneous. That in fact, when you escape the temporality, the time limitations that are a part of the Earth game, the physical universe game rules, as you see them now, all of these matters are taking place at once, and so those Atlantean lives are as viable and as real and as in action now as any Earth life that you would connect with. And so the purpose of the connection is to share energy with another aspect of yourself, to give what is required by that energy, by that individual, and to receive what is required by you. And so there is an exchange